So everybody, we're going to get into our next speaker here, and I am so incredibly excited to be bringing Marguerite Rigoglioso back to PortalToAscension. She's been on PortalToAscension multiple times over the last few years, and not only is she such a beautiful soul, like such a beautiful soul that I just love to interact with, but her information is next level, mind blowing, seriously. And Margaret Rigoglioso, today's presentation, by the way, that she's bringing forward is called the Pleiades, their ancient, present, and future connection with Earth. And a little bit about Marguerite. She's the founding director of Seven Sisters Mystery School and a scholar practitioner of the ancient Mediterranean mystery traditions. The world's foremost authority on virgin births, she's the author of the mystery tradition of miraculous conception, Mary and the lineage of virgin births, as well as the cult of divine birth in ancient Greece, and Virgin Mother goddesses of antiquity. These groundbreaking books reveal an entire suppressed history of holy women who engaged in a practice of divine conception throughout the ancient Mediterranean world and cast Mother Mary in a completely new light. As a teacher, mentor with Seven Sisters Mystery School, Dr. Rigoglioso works one-on-one with groups to help develop their deep intuition, their unique spiritual path, and their sacred careers. She offers evolutionary online courses such as the Mother Mary Mystery Teachings, the Priestess of Dove Oracle Training, the Holy Womb Chakra Teaching, the Divine Birth Mystery Audio Series, the Awakening to Our Fairykin course, and so much more. And what does the word Pleiades conjure for you? So what she's asking here. A starry thing somewhere in the sky, an intelligence claiming to be channeled by some of today's oracles, a new age confabulation. What is this? So we're going to go on an amazing journey with Marguerite right now. So let me go ahead and bring you on, Marguerite. Go ahead and accept the panelist. There we go.
All right, there we go.
Hey, hi.
So nice to be here, Neil.
So nice to have you here.
Thank you
Appreciate you so much. Definitely.
Blessed be. Likewise. And I'll be showing slides. So I don't know if you're able to make me a co-host, perhaps.
Yeah, you have permissions right now, so go for it.
Oh, good. Excellent.
Take it away.
Yes, greetings, everybody. And thank you to Neil and everybody. It's ended up being a Pleiades day for me. Neil, I also just wanted to confirm that I'm okay going an hour and a half.
Let me check my schedule here.
I'll adjust if
yes. You're good for an hour and a half.
All right. It'll go fast, everybody. Don't worry. Anyway, so, I thought that I was going much earlier today. So it was really interesting because what ended up happening is I ended up listening to almost everything today in and around everything that I had to do to rearrange my life. So here I am. So what I'm going to do is share my screen because I'm offering some slides for you. And so what I'm talking about today is going to overlap some and validate what others have said or be validated by what others have said and add some additional information. And I think as I've listened to today, the piece that I'm mainly bringing in regarding the Pleiades has to do with the womb and women and women's power. And there's a whole cadre of Pleiadian beings and consciousness that has to do with the feminine. And that's what typically goes missing when most people talk about the Pleiades, channel the Pleiades, and so forth. And I think, in part that's by nefarious design by whoever has pulled the wool over our eyes and the veils down. And so, we're in a patriarchy where the feminine has gone missing, and it is like the missing ingredient remedy that we need right now. So you're going to be getting a lot of information about who the Pleiades were as these particular female star beings. So let's just quickly look at where the Pleiades are. Some of you may be familiar, some of you may not, but the easiest way to locate them is through Orion up in the sky, which is that constellation with the three-star belt, 3 stars of the belt, and then the 2 kind of shoulders type thing and the 2 knees. And if you look from the belt all the way up, you're going to end up going into Taurus, the constellation. At the nape of the neck of the Taurus constellation are the Pleiades. And in contrast to Orion and some of these other stars, they basically look like a smudge. And so there's a teaching right there for me that is that they really embody the mysteries. And as with all mysteries, they're best looked at obliquely from your rods, not your cones, because the minute you look straight on, it tends to disappear. And if any of you have had mystical experiences and then you try to explain it or you try to peer into it, the whole thing just dissolves. And so you need to hold it with that other aspect of yourself, which is your intuitive side. So I think that's in a way what the Pleiades are really all about. The other thing I'm going to focus on is who they were to the Greeks. So, we've heard a lot today of people who are directly getting information from the Pleiades, which is great. And that's where we need to be. And they've been here all along in our histories. Before the first announced Pleiadian channeler on the planet, whoever that was, you could have gone into the Greek tradition and the Egyptian tradition and the Cherokee tradition and all these other peoples around the world, and you could have found them. And so what I'm doing today is I'm unearthing some of the Greek material, because this has a lot to do with not only the sacred feminine aspect of the Pleiades, but some timelines and histories of what might have gone on the planet that we need to reclaim and know about, along with all of this other material about what they represent, unity consciousness and, love and that type of thing. So
Marguerite, could we ask you to make your slideshow full screen?
Oh, I can't, because then I can't look at my note. All right, you know
Okay.
what? Let me do that. And I'm just going to look at my notes the other way.
All right, yeah, if possible.
Will that do it?
Yeah, beautiful.
Okay. So I'll just look at my notes the other way. So they were considered 7 stars or 13, but of course there are many. Their name, in fact, may come from the Greek term that means many. And as someone was saying earlier today, there literally are probably hundreds of stars or planets, if not thousands, within what we call this asterism in the sky. And for the Greeks, it was said that no other constellation held as great honor. Okay. They marked the movement of them in the sky marked the beginning of summer and winter. So they were connected with the seasonal cycles, and that's also going to connect us with Mother Earth, the feminine, birth, death, rebirth, and that sort of thing. These are the names as we know them. There are a couple of different listings of what their names are, but the most popular are their mother being Pleione, as somebody has mentioned earlier, their father being Atlas, whose name goes to the Atlas Mountains in Africa. So that's telling us something about an African story here. It also goes to the Atlantic Ocean and Atlantis. If you start again dissecting into these words, you start understanding the history. And who they were named Maya, Electra, Asterope or Sterope, Taugete or Taugeta, Kelaino, Alcuone, and Merope. And this is like, if you're going to be coming from the perspective of how the Greeks pronounce them, now we might say Taigeta, Alcyone, that type of thing. So, but I'm just trying to return us a little bit to the Greek sound of these names, because those syllables and those vowels are also important. And so, all right, this is where I get a little confused about how to get to the next slide. Okay, whoops. Whenever I do this, I'm just not sure how to get to the next slide from my.
You can normally just push spacebar. That might do it.
Oh, spacebar. No, nothing I'm doing is.
Or the forward arrow.
Maybe click escape and then start it again. Let's see.
Yeah. Okay, it's not escaping. Oh wow.
There we
Okay.
go.
So let's see here. I'm just not sure. I may not be able to make it full.
Yeah,
full
that's fine. Just do
okay.
it however, whatever works.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so let me find us.
Yeah, and I'll actually enlarge it on the replay, so I'll fix that for the replay.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's about as large as I can get it without losing it on my end. So we're talking about these female beings. And before I go more into the history, I wanted to sort of give you my own connectivity with the Pleiades. Like so many people, I really first heard about them through Barbara Marciniak, as everybody was just saying. And I followed her. I went to various of her live presentations and so forth back, I don't know, 15 or more years ago. And I then started my own research. And so fast forward to 2019, when I basically left California to move, what eventually was to move to the East Coast. And on that trip, I went to quote unquote Devil's Tower, correctly named Mateo Tipi. And this is also basically known as Bear's Home, Bear's Lodge. There are many stories about what this is. And lately, what I've come to understand is that this is a cut off world tree. And that originally, this was a very, very tall, high tree, which helped connect the worlds. So we have a lot of Pleiadian activity around here. And this includes that it was very sacred here to the Lakota and others, the Kiowa, the Arapaho, and so forth, who associate the Pleiades with this formation. Okay, it's in Wyoming, far eastern Wyoming, and they understood it to be the center of the universe. So this is pointing to the importance of this place and its connection to the Pleiades as the center of the universe. And the Kiowa and the Lakota had similar myths explaining the creation of the Pleiades and Devil's Tower. And so according to the Kiowa, 7 young maidens, and we're going to hear this story repeated in the Greeks and so forth, 7 young maidens went out to play, were spotted by several giant bears, and the bears saw the young women and began to chase them. The chase of the Pleiades, of these females, is going to be another theme you're going to hear about. And in an effort to escape the bears, the women climbed on top of a rock and prayed to the spirit of the rock to save them. And then the bears tried to get them. And these striations here are their claw marks as they try to get up to these maidens. So many great Native American leaders are said to have visited this tower to seek spiritual counsel, including Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull. So fast forward to 20, I was there at 2019. In 2021, last year, as of this filming, I went there again. And the first time I went, I did a cacao ceremony by myself. And the second time I went, it was on my birthday, 7/7, and which is the Pleiades number, actually, 7. And I did a cacao ceremony with various people. And as I was getting ready for this cacao ceremony, I thought, well, why don't I just crack open this book, this little kind of Bear Teepee guidebook that I bought several years ago, but never looked at. And so what did I end up seeing? Is this in this is what I saw in 2019 when I was doing a cacao ceremony, and it's there plain as the, day. The way the light was, what I could see was this Native American chief and his regalia. Hopefully you can all see that. And when I went back, of course, I couldn't find it again. And I come to find out that when you're there, it's known for showing people things that are then never shown again, right? So I was being shown this chief. And I thought, well, that's really interesting, because I know this is a Pleiadian portal that's really connected with these Native Americans, and that these big chiefs took counsel there. And what did I channel in my cacao ceremony? But it was really all Pleiadian information, and it was about unity consciousness and how we are going to have to be really careful to not activate divisions. This is 2019. That was, a year before the whole COVID thing happened, not even a year. And I realized that I was being given this message. So then back in 2021, 2 years later, when I opened the book, this is what I saw. And this is White Bull. And he is, I believe it's saying here, the nephew of Sitting Bull. Okay. So basically I was being visited by White Bull and these chiefs. And I was being shown how these Native Americans were very much in connection with the Pleiades, and that this was a portal that we needed to tend to again. And I really understood, that it could well have been a world tree right there. And that this was one of the world trees that was like an umbilical cord that connected us to the Pleiades as part of our origins. So prior to this, years prior to this, I don't even know, maybe this was in like 2017 or something, 2016. I was in the Redwoods in California, again, where I had lived at the time. And I had done cannabis ceremony there. It was rare for me to do it outside. Normally I would do it inside. I always need to feel safe and contained. But this was a beautiful redwood forest where there was an amazing gnarled redwood grandmother tree that I would go to. And as I was walking back, I had the feeling of like energies from on high saying to me, well, remember, you're a Pleiadian ambassador. We want you to remember that now. And I'm like, what? First of all, I had never heard the words Pleiadian ambassador put together. Afterward, then I found out about that Christine Day considered herself one and so forth. I said, I'm never going to say that, that just sounds way the heck too new age. And, but anyway, it started working on me. And then I realized, what that meant, that I had an agreement that I was going to be teaching this information about the Pleiades, these pieces that I was finding. And that's in one sense what makes me a Pleiadian ambassador. And then years prior to that, because of all the research I had done on the Pleiades, the only other, I think, medicine ceremony, cannabis, that I did outdoors, it was up on Mount Burdell. They said, we're giving you the name Dove, and in thanks for all of this intrepid research that you've done to bring the Pleiades out, because Pleiades, the word Pleiades and the word dove are identical. And as we will see, the Pleiades were seen as doves, as 7 doves. And so, there was this connection that I had and this love. And so when they said Pleiadian ambassador, I was like, oh my goodness, I begin to understand. And I was never told I'm Pleiadian, I'm from the Pleiades. I never really felt like I was from the Pleiades, but I had some kind of agreement. So that's just sort of like my little, pedigree for talking to you today about this. And we'll see how much we get through. The bulk of this material you can find in my book, The Cult of Divine Birth in Ancient Greece, my first book, in the chapter on Dodona, and then even more in my dissertation called Bearing the Holy Ones, a study of the cult of divine birth in ancient Greece, which you can get through ProQuest Direct. Your local library can order it. And if you get it, you will see even more of the references that I wasn't even able to fit in here. And then I have a webinar. So whatever I don't get to today is in that webinar, and it's called Reclaiming Our Starry Origins. And it has lots of other juicy stuff too. And if you write to us at dove@sevensistersofferings.com, you can get that. So the thing about the Pleiades is, they have this interesting behavior related to planet Earth, which encodes so much of what they're about. Their dawn rise, so in the east, in the northern hemisphere, in the eastern horizon, in the middle of May, like around the 15th, and this used to be May 1st, the Pleiades will rise with the sun into the daylight sky. That's called the heliacal or dawn rise. And then in November, and it used to be around November 1st, so again, Samhain, this is when the Pleiades set in the west as the night sky is coming upon us, and then you can see the Pleiades in the night sky. So they're connected with sowing, which is in Mediterranean climates. November is the sowing time, the planting time, and then the May time of the harvest. So this is, again, talking about how they're connected with nurture, farming, and all of those types of activities in the human plane. Somebody also mentioned that the Pleiades love dancing. And yes, I mean, they are depicted oftentimes in art as 7 dancing sisters. So one of the lineages that they come from goes like this. And there's a second one I'll show you later that's connected with Atlantis. But this one has that their, let's see, parents, grandparents, great-grandparent, that their great-grandmother is actually the Earth, Gaia, which is really interesting to think about. And their great-grandfather is Uranus, or the heavens. And then their grandparents are a female named Clymene or Asia, whose name goes to the Asian continent, and Iapetos, and these are considered titans. So those great, humongous beings that I think we have to start understanding. These are not just fictional characters, but these are real beings that have, dimensional reality, timelines, histories. Their parents then are Atlas, another titan, and Pleione, who was considered an ocean nymph. But what ocean are we talking about? It really is the ocean of stars, the whole universe itself in a way. And then here we have them, and this is their transliteration from Greek. You can see where the accent marks go and all that. What is really fascinating when you look at the Greek stuff, and here's where the women's energy really comes into it, is according to one tradition, these sisters were virgin hunting companions of the goddess Artemis. So what does that do? That connects them with virginity, because Artemis was a virgin. It connects them with a great female being who is also closely connected with the earth plane. She was originally the protector of animals. And then it also, in the later time, connects them with hunting. But what it's really connecting them with is the Amazon, the female Amazon. And what are we going to see? In the Australian tradition, they are seen to be Amazons. And even in the Greek tradition, these 7 sisters were seen to be Amazons. So, this is quite different than the Nordic running around Pleiades that is typically in our consciousness, according to more recent, oracles and things like that. So this is expanding it a bit and deepening into what are they all about. Now, here, what we find out in the Greek tradition is that with their mother, Pleione, they were pursued. They were endlessly pursued in unwanted sexual fashion by the giant hunter Orion. Okay. And this sexual pursuit of the Pleiades is a recurrent theme that we will see throughout cultures. Orion, we were already talking about that. What is that? The Orions are, that's a constellation where there are bunches of different types of civilizations, but one are the Draconians, the reptilians. So what this is talking about is a sexual pursuit on the part of the reptilians of the Pleiades. Unwanted, wanted their wombs. Okay. And so what I'm adding a layer here to previous things that were talked about, because they're always described as like these laboratory technicians who somehow insert DNA into the humans and create them, the idea that it's in some lab somewhere. And it's like the lab is the wombs of these beings, these female beings. And this is, what I am really called to bring forth in all the research that I've done. This is not a laboratory experiment. This is a female consciousness willed interactivity with various places in the cosmos, including humanity. Because, otherwise we're in the place of saying that Mother Mary was just like a passive victim to her own conception of Jesus, when it's like she was intimately involved in this. She was the creator of the whole gosh darn thing. So, I get a little hot-headed around this because this is what's missing, and this is what needs to come back into our understanding of this story. And so what we see in the Greek story is that out of pity for these Pleiades being endlessly pursued by these reptilians who want to rape them, impregnate them, and do a false breeding program with them, is that Zeus, who I'll talk about in a minute, decides to metamorphose them, change them into doves and place them among the stars. So there's some idea that they somehow needed to be taken away from the earth plane. They needed to be brought back to the stars. We have to kind of decode and understand, what are these stories really talking about? And maybe some of them have garbled timelines and histories in them, but there's much more here than we understand when we're just hearing oracles talk about them. Okay. And so in one tradition, the Pleiades were placed in the sky not because Zeus was taking pity on them, but because they were grieving. They were grieving so badly. Why? Because their father, Atlas, had been consigned to hold up the heavens after he challenged Zeus to ownership of the heavens. So we're talking about astral battles and warfare that involved Atlas, Zeus, the seven sisters of the Pleiades, and so forth. Before I say a little bit more about Zeus, in the Greek tradition, the Pleiades were the doves who brought ambrosia to the infant Zeus in order to bestow divinity on him. So this Zeus character somehow was born. He needed to be empowered, and whatever they were doing on these astral dimensions, the Pleiades somehow were involved in cultivating this being and bringing him up to this humongous stature that eventually became the guy who took over this sector of the universe and beat Atlas and beat Hera's child, to supremacy of the universe, so to speak. So what I've come to understand over the years is that Zeus is an Anunnaki reptilian hybrid. And where you can see that are in some images where he has a lizard tail and so forth. And so he's involved in this warfare. What we think of as the Greek gods were really Anunnaki, okay? And half the time Anunnaki reptilian hybrids. And so there's some weird, intricate, intimate story between Zeus, the Anunnaki reptilian, and the Pleiades, where on the one hand, they were helping him out. And then on the other hand, kind of his people were causing them problems. And then he sort of had to take pity. And what I realized today is that I'm in the bathroom and I'm like, why the heck, did he do that with them? I think here's what I think happened. First of all, in medicine ceremony years ago, when I looked at this, I was like, why the heck would the Pleiades nurture this guy? What the hell was that all about? And what I got was that, well, they had to do that as a compromise to prevent something worse from happening. I was like, oh my God. And so then this morning, I was like, okay, so they were feeding him. Oh, that's why he was so nice to them in the end. That's why he prevented them from getting raped to the degree that they might have been, or misused to the degree that they might have been, because they had raised him. So there are these intimate compromises on the astral plane that went on, that are part of Pleiadian history, and so forth and so on. And we're going to see how much the Pleiadians got involved in the earth plane and humanity as we go along. So as I mentioned before, the Greeks identified these stars with doves. And what's important about that is that doves are the symbol throughout the ancient Mediterranean world for the human and divine spirit. And so this linked them to important religious festivals. And they are also symbols of peace, doves. They mate for life. They are therefore symbols of romantic harmony. And they're also symbols of divine, mystical, feminine prophecy. So the Pleiades, as you know, these seven sisters are pretty gosh darn powerful. And so what I'm calling on is the oracles of the world to start turning their attention to this, because I think that a lot of this oracle information is getting closed off. Okay. And we need a lot more feminine oracles who are going into the Pleiades to look into this. I just did a huge Healing the Womb 3 activation with Z Earth Star and Indigo Angel. Now, Indigo is on to the crap that has been going on around the universe and around the earth plane with all of this abduction of the womb. Okay, on whatever level you're talking about, be it human, which is a microcosm of the holy cosmic womb. And so what we're starting to do is realize that these events and programs and timelines have been going on, and we're starting to say, no, we don't want any more abduction of the human womb. We don't want any more forced breeding programs. We don't want any more, ET experimentation into our wombs, taking the babies, whatever they're doing, that I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, have heard of, or maybe have experienced. So it's like, as I've been going through the years with this, it's just my understanding is expanding, and my trumpet is growing louder about this. So again, what we see is that The Pleiades are connected with life and death, the harvest, the seeds, and we see them therefore connected also with the goddesses Demeter and Persephone, because the November, is considered night sky. They are that's considered the gloomy, sorrowful time. Okay. So there's a connection with Persephone there in the underworld and the Pleiades. We also hear in the Greek tradition that the Pleiades are the half sisters of the Huades or the Hyades, okay, who are here in Taurus, the bull. And they both have Atlas as a father. And the appearance of the Huades would announce rainy and stormy weather at the time of the year when they rose simultaneously with the sun, okay? So the Pleiades are very, very important to the Greeks. And Pythagoras, that great mystic, esoteric mathematician and so forth, referred to them as the lyre of the muses. So the muses are those great female beings who are the inspiration for music and history and dance and the arts and, all these different types of things. Each one represents like a different art or can be contacted in order to get that type of information. So they're already inspirational beings. They're prophetic, oracular types of females. And so to say that the Pleiades inspire them is like, wow, this is really pointing to their big, big role and their bestowers of information. So little about their father, Atlas. He was said to be, by the Greeks, the founder of astrology. The founder of astrology, right? That system of divination that relies on interpreting the positions of the asterisms in space. And so one Greek writer, Diodorus, said that this idea that he held the sky upon his shoulders was an allusion to his having discovered the spherical nature of the stars. But it feels to me like there's something that went on here. He was punished. Zeus beat him for supremacy of this sector of the universe, whatever it might be, around the Milky Way and so forth. And Atlas was imprisoned somehow, like having the cosmos on your shoulders, that's different than being the ruler of it. It's a kind of a burden. And there's more to that story that I'll go into a little bit later. And what we see is that he was connected to Africa somehow. His name goes to the Atlas Mountains, right? That whole mountain range. So we have to look at what are these geographical identifications? What are they telling us? And so what we learn from the Greeks also is that the Pleiades were the seat of immortality. The seat of immortality. So if we're looking for like coordinates, Scotty, Scotty, get me the seat of immortality. Aye, Captain. It's in the Pleiades. So there's some connection between immortality of the human soul and even the Anunnaki soul, because they were feeding him ambrosia, which was meant to give him immortality, and the concept of, eternal life. I think that's fascinating. You know, any one of these things could become a topic for channeling or a medicine ceremony, right? And I think we should all just start going into this. So we see them referred to all over the world, basically. Here's a Mesopotamian seal where you've got this weird guy who's doing some sort of weird murder thing, and Taurus the bull doesn't look too happy over here. And then you got the seven sisters of the Pleiades. That doesn't look like such a happy one to me. And then we have the Greek concept that Taurus the bull, that constellation, is none other than Zeus himself. So Zeus, very much connected with, his whole being blew up into governing that sector of the universe, the whole Taurus constellation and everything within it. Orion's on top of it, and so this is what you can start discerning when you start looking at these things, and understanding, penetrating into what the Greeks and all of these other peoples were telling us. And what do we see about Zeus in his bull formation? He was always doing shenanigans around women, raping them, abducting them, and so forth. This is talking about forced breeding programs that are right there in the Greek tradition. In this case, we have that as a celestial bull. He carried off and impregnated Europa. And she subsequently gave birth to major figures such as King Minos of Crete, and the entire European continent has her name. So, these are stamps and marks that are telling us major history, major female character, major story that you might want to pay attention to. I'm only understanding now, and since working with Indigo Angel, that these are talking about forced breeding programs, impregnations of women's wombs. So it wasn't in a lab, okay? It was in one womb or another, whether it's a human womb or a celestial being's womb. The womb matters. This is where all the action takes place. And this is where all the healing is going to take place, which is why a lot of us are awakening to the concept that we have to remove these tags, remove these implants, remove these programs, say no to these abductions, and so forth. But of course, originally, Taurus the bull was Taurus the cow before Zeus took over. And this was the realm of Hera, the great goddess of the universe. Okay, so we see this male-female astral warfare going on here. And this is like, even I'm only just even getting this as I'm talking to you now, that this was a warfare thing, that the feminine of that Taurus cow domain of the universe got taken over by the masculine, imprinted with it, and basically raped. And so here we have this story of Io, again, being so-called seduced by Zeus and giving birth to the legendary king of Egypt, Apophis. So we've got Minos being born, Apophis, the king of Egypt. Again, wow, what the heck is going on here? Forced breeding programs. And so what happens with Io is that Hera gets angry not only with Zeus, but she gets angry with the females who begin to cooperate somehow or allow this stuff to go on. And she transforms Io into a cow for this transgression with Zeus. So, it gets complicated because these goddesses, they get pissed off and, they're not all of a sudden love and light anymore. And this is where the Amazonian aspect of the Pleiades also comes in, as you'll see. So the Pleiades are also associated with the Hathors. Their name in Greek, in the Egyptian, is Athurai, stars of Hathor, Athur. And, although when I talked to one famous channeler of the Hathors, he said, no, the Hathors are not the Pleiades. I'm like, well, I'm looking at a different book than you are. And what that book tells me is that the Hathors are the Pleiades. So, what does that mean? But the Hathors and the Pleiades have a very strong connection. And what we see in the Egyptian Book of the Dead is that there's a motif of the 7 cows and their bull. And this has to do with the soul's journey to the afterlife. The bull here is identified as Osiris. And so this Egyptian Book of the Dead says that the soul will encounter them on its journey to the afterlife. And what else does that mean? Well, the deceased has to present these cows and the bull with offerings. He or she has to recite their names in the hope that he will be allowed into their retinue, essentially, and be reborn on their thighs. So this is telling us that the soul, if it wants to reincarnate, it has to make good with these Hathorian, Pleiadian bulls of heaven and cows of heaven, and be expiated of whatever their sins were, and so forth and so on, in order that they be reborn in the Pleiades, the source of soul. It's considered a source of souls. There's a lot more on that if you want to read in my book, The Cult of Divine Birth in Ancient Greece. I go into that discussion about the bulls and the bull and the cows of heaven and the Pleiades. And so the Taurus constellation and the Pleiades are associated with life and death also by virtue of the fact that when the sun enters the sign of Taurus, which is basically springtime, it was believed in ancient Greece that bees could be spontaneously generated from the carcasses of bulls. So this is talking about a divine birth, virgin birth motif of bees coming out of the carcasses of bulls, or essentially souls coming out of the Pleiades, okay, being spontaneously born out of the Pleiades. And I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but I'm actually, as I'm talking, I'm just starting to make, new connections about this since the last time I gave this presentation, which was in May. And bees themselves are parthenogenetic. They can reproduce both by being impregnated by the male drones, but they can also reproduce spontaneously. All right. So we're talking now about the concept of virgin birth being connected with the Pleiades. And that's exactly what we're going to see. Then we have this idea that the Greeks said there were several celestial locations with Pleiadian associations as, again, the source and destination of human and divine souls. The source and destination of human and divine souls. So that where are souls generated? Well, one big place is the Pleiades, somewhere there. And so we see this particularly in that one such destination and soul source was the Alquonian Lake. And that's named after the Pleiad, Alquone, right? So the Pleiades are the place where souls go to in the afterlife, and then they're reborn on the thighs of those, the wombs of those cows, the 7 Hathors. And again, here we see the Pleiades implied in beliefs regarding the role of the Milky Way in the life of the human. Because the Pleiades are located on the fringe of this Milky Way, they're considered scientifically to be part of it. And the Milky Way itself was, again, the path and destination of disincarnate souls in their journey in the afterlife. Ding! Want to know where you're going? Pleiades as a good way station for you. Might not be your final place, but you will go through there. especially all of us on this call who are, into the Pleiades because we have karma with them, right? And again, the Milky Way is a place from which souls reincarnated. It's also the abode of the deities and the demigods, and a road leading to the palace of Zeus. So, he had a nice little palace set up, the reptilian Anunnaki, somewhere in the Milky Way on whatever dimension. And all right. So their grandfather, as you will recall, Okeanos, sometimes called Oceanus, is understood to be, that's supposed to be like the ocean around the earth, but it's actually the celestial ocean. And so the river Okeanos simply meant the galaxy, okay, or the Milky Way. And so this again it's connecting the Pleiadian maidens with this body of stars, right? So there's many, many things that connect them with the Milky Way, that connect them with the origin of souls, the origin of gods, the destination of souls, and so forth. And so we see these Pleiades being cross-culturally understood as very, very important. Here we see the Dendera astrological disk and the ancient city of Dendera had the temple of Hathor. And this was dedicated to the stars of Hathor, the Pleiades. And a zodiac in the temple places the Pleiades as the center from which it was believed that our solar system revolved over 25,000 years. The center of our solar system, where we revolved around. So whether that is astronomically correct or not, it means that, our world is rotating around the Pleiades somehow, okay? And all around the world, we see that the Pleiades are understood to be the creators of the universe, the center of heaven, the locus of divinity, the origin place of humanity, and so forth. Here we have the Nebra disk in Germany. And this is depicting the seven sisters of the Pleiades as well. We hear that the pre-Islamic Arabs, the Kabyles of Northern Africa, the Dayaks of Borneo felt that, again, the Pleiades was the seat of immortality, the central point of the universe. And numerous peoples have said that they come from the Pleiades. The Bardi of Western Australia, the Chalagi or Cherokee of North America, the Apibones of Brazil, and the Mesoamericans, right? So Mexico area, also created calendars that showed a great year cycle in which our solar system rotates around Alcuone, one of the Pleiadian stars. And the Maya use 3 calendars, and one of them is based on the 26,000 year cycle of the Pleiades constellation. So again, we've been talking about how the Pleiades represent unity. The North American Plains Indians looked upon them this way. The Pawnee prayed to them to teach their people how to live in harmony, and so forth. We have the Blackfeet here, the Iroquois or the Haudenosaunee, the Seven Nation Confederacy, and other Native Americans really regulated their most important festivals by these stars and invoked them for health, well-being, and happiness. And again, you know, this takes us back to Matteo Tipi and the importance to the Lakota of that place and the importance of that place with the Pleiades. So what I want to emphasize is that the Pleiades have been considered female in nature. All right. And again, this is a widely understood concept throughout the world. They are mostly seen as mother, Pleione, and daughters. And so even in the Aborigines of Australia, we see the motif of them being pursued in unwanted sexual fashion by male warriors or a male hunter. In the Australian Aboriginal story, the dog men of Orion pursue the Emu women of the Pleiades, the dog men of Orion. And then in South Australia, the Ngarrindjeri people are located near Hindmarsh Island. And there, the Pleiades are associated with initiation, spiritual awareness, and protection of young women. And I think this is one of the most remarkable stories that it is thought that young maids come down from heaven during the winter time in the Southern Hemisphere, which would be the summertime for us up here, to visit their mother who resides here in the water surrounding this Hindmarsh Island. And so what this is telling us is of a visitation back and forth, that this is a Pleiadian portal. They're coming back and forth between the earth plane, between the astral plane, just like at Matteo Tipi. And the practices associated with these female beings have to do with rites of passage for young women as they mature. And they involve matters such as learning how to produce food, birth the next generation, and help maintain the celestial order. So it's not only that they're doing all these earth things, but the women are connecting, you know, with the Pleiades and with the celestial stories. And their story here is that the Pleiades were originally adolescent girls, so young, maybe just prepubescent or just having menstruated, who undertook a powerful initiation. So this is their initiation time. And the reason was to advance the consciousness of their entire people. When you really reflect on that, imagine a group of people on Earth who's going to advance the consciousness of their entire people. Well, you know, that's many of us, but listen to what they did. Their elders put them through these trials. They had to conquer pain and fear. So they had to fast. They had to have their teeth punctured. They had to undergo ritual body scarring, the perforation of their nasal septum. They had to sleep on a bed of ants. They had to sleep on graves and who knows what else. So these girls ended up surviving their ordeal quite bravely. They persuaded the adolescent females of the other tribes to be initiated in a similar fashion as a means of developing their spiritual awareness and capacities. And as a result and a reward, they were made guides of their race, and Great Spirit transferred them to the heavens to shine as the stars. So again, you can discern multiple timelines, multiple histories, timelines that involve intimate connectivity of the Pleiades with the human realm, and then times that involve them being away, and then times that involve them going back and forth. which is kind of like now, right? And what we're all up to here today. I'm going to go through these a little more quickly. The Maori of New Zealand consider them very sacred, a mother and her 6 daughters. And this has to do with cyclical events of the cosmos. We have in Colombia, Rami Kumu, who is a great creatrix that sort of encapsulates and incorporates the Pleiades. So they see the Pleiades as one big, great creatrix, essentially a womb. And here's their image of it, right? And this story is also very interesting. So they equate the Pleiades with the vagina, essentially, of this goddess. All right. So again, the Pleiades as womb. And they saw them as like a gourd with wax inside that Rami Kumu once offered to humans. And had they eaten it, they would have been made immortal. But obviously, something got in the way. They didn't eat it. These humans were not made immortal. And, you know, this starts bringing up the ideas of the Garden of Eden, the Garden of the Tree of Life, the Tree of Knowledge, and how humans, you know, there was something that prevented humans from having their immortality. And somehow, you know, we got cut off from the Pleiades in this drama. In the Indian tradition, they are known as the 7 mothers of the world, nothing less than the 7 mothers of the world. Now that is really, really interesting, because this is exactly what we're going to see in the Greek tradition. Before we go there, we're looking at white buffalo calf woman who, Standing Elk of the Lakota asserts that she was the youngest of the Pleiadian sisters. And what is her story? Her story is that she comes to Earth. She appears to these men. They're like, ooh, I want to have sex with you. And, you know, they're kind of coming at her aggressively. And she's like, no, right? Clean it up, fellas. Come on, chop, chop. And so she gives them, you know, their sacred pipe and rituals, 7 sacred rituals, and so forth. So again, the Pleiades kind of coming back periodically back and forth to teach us things and help us to curb all these negative tendencies that are very reptilian, that have to do with over-sexuality, rape tendencies, and so forth. This is a possession energy that is upon our planet, and that we're dealing with the help of the Pleiades, who were also Amazons, because in the Greek tradition, they embodied female warriorhood. In one myth fragment of Greece, their mother was the queen of the Amazons. So who are the Amazons? Well, they are women who just are like, we've had it, you know? If you men are not going to protect us, we got to do it. We've got to take the bow and arrow and take it into our own hands. Do we want to do this? No. Is this our natural nature? No. But what else is going to go on? We're either going to get put into forced breeding programs and raped, or, you know, or we have to handle this. So somehow the Pleiades, the 7 sisters of the Pleiades, have this very fierce warrior aspect. And even, well, we'll see this in the story of Taugete in a minute. So there are many other stories. New South Wales, they're considered the Mai. Again, they are connected with the protection of women, the feistiness of women, and so forth. Now, the number commonly associated with them, 7, was seen by the Pythagoreans to be the number of virginity, for reasons that I won't go into right now. It is in my other presentations. And 7 is the number of virginity, okay? So it means ultimately that it is the number associated with Athena, and Athena was a virgin mother, is what I show, okay, in my work. So this 7 virgin aspect of the Pleiades corresponds with what we find in the Greek tradition, which is that they were both virgins and mothers. In fact, as the Hindus show, they were the 7 mothers of the world. Again, not in a lab, not in some far off place where people are tinkering, with whatever, but in the wombs of these women. So how did we get Pleiadian DNA? Well, we were born. All right. And where you see this is in science. It is verified in science, where the 7 mothers of the world are in this concept of Brian Sykes, who says that almost everyone, at least of European descent, and I think it's really all over the world, can trace an unbroken genetic link back to one of 7 women. And when I spoke to Brian Sykes about this personally, when he came to Berkeley and I was living out there, he said, and they're all related, these 7 women. So the 7 Sisters of the Pleiades is in the scientific research that's been done. So they're the 7 mothers of the world. So what does this mean? How did this happen? Well, what the Greeks tell us is the following: that these Pleiades had sexual relations of some nature or another with gods, essentially. And thus, what was born of them became the first line of humanity, our most distant ancestors, the first line of humanity. And they were virgins, but they have rape stories. And this is what we're going to see. What one of the ancient writers says is that this tradition about the Pleiades was not even, it did not even happen on Greek soil. He says they originally belonged to the Atlanteans, North Africa. So when we start boring down into it, the Pleiades as 7 mothers of the world is an African origin story. That's what these myths tell us. And the detail that the Pleiades mother may have been an Amazon queen also firmly places them in Africa, because even into modern day, there were the Dahomey, who you see here, who were known as African warrior women. And so when I did a medicine ceremony one time years ago, because, I'm like Pleiades, the Nordics, whatever. They were just like, these are 7 African mothers. I was like, whoa. These are 7 African mothers, Now, another case could be that each one represents a different racial line. That could well be. But it did kind of like knock me in the head, this thing that I channeled, that they were 7, they literally were 7 Black women. And in a way, I think that that's important for us to look at and consider, who are the Pleiades really? What do they really look like? Have they been whitewashed? Even in our own channeling states, what is that all about? Like, is there another level of discernment that we have to have around the information we're even getting about them? Has that even been infiltrated to some level? What does it matter? But it does matter because, even in the Cosmic Disclosure show, Corey Good was talking about a leader of another planet where they had gone through a similar type of thing that humanity is going through. And they had, how they have the illustrator who would like illustrate all these beings and stuff. It was a black guy. All right. And I'm like, wow, okay, something for us to think about. So also what we have here is that these Atlanteans or Atlantides in the Greeks probably are referencing the Atlanteans of Atlantis, okay? And as we know, this is a story that comes to us from Plato as it's written historically in our records. And, most scholars and everybody's like, oh, it's just a mythological land, blah, blah, blah. But all of us are like, hey, we were there, Atlantis is now in some ways, right? Probably in the Atlantic Ocean, conveniently named such. And it was like circular bits of lands. It was probably some terraformed thing, right? Because that doesn't really look like something that would come naturally from the earth, but and it had waterways, right? And so here's the lineage when we look at the Pleiades as being associated with Atlantis. So there is the Greek god, again, probably Anunnaki being Poseidon, who's connected with the oceans and the waters and so forth. And he has a sexual relation with a human woman named Cleito. Now, what this would tell us is what I know from my research, that she was a virgin birth priestess and that she was able to interdimensionally mate through ritual with this god Poseidon, whether that was by choice, under duress, we don't know. Those records are lost in the sands of time, but that would be something for people to channel on. And that they gave birth to Atlas. There's an unnamed female partner to him, probably it was Pleione, and that it's from them that Maya, Electra, Alcuone, Taugete, Kelainos, Terope, and Merope were born. So their grandfather in this story is Poseidon, and their grandmother is a human woman. And could this be talking about multiple timelines or multiple appearances of the Pleiades on the Earth plane? Multiple interactivities, right? Because these great beings appear in incarnated form more than once, as we see with various gods and so forth. So that contrasts with the earlier lineage that I showed you. And in a way, this idea of Pleiadians being connected with Africa goes along with the theory of Luca Cavalli Sforza and some others that humanity did originate in Africa and just traveled to all of the continents over various time periods. So I'm going to conclude today by looking a little more into who these women are, were, shall be, more so than I did last time and more so than I have in recent presentations. Because I think we need to look at these histories. We need to get to know these seven sisters, their stories, their travails. We have Maya, who, by essentially a forced rape by Zeus, gave birth to Hermes. And her name means nurse. So this, in a way, calls to mind that she may have been nursing, one of the ones who nursed Zeus into his stature as an Anunnaki giganto being. And so now he's going back and raping her. Or is this some kind of forced breeding program on the part of the Anunnaki reptilians with these Pleiadians to create beings on the earth? Now, you know, Hermes, okay, Maya was a cave dwelling woman. She was a virgin. She was a priestess, cave dwelling. All right. She was a nymph, so to speak. So that's a little bit about her. And you can read my book, The Cult of Divine Birth in Ancient Greece, to find out even more about these women. But, you know, who is Hermes? Well, he was thought to be the inventor of the alphabet, numbers, astronomy, music, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He achieved full divinization. And Plato himself says that it was not clear whether he was a man or a god, which according to my theories means that Hermes Thoth was understood to have been a divinely born human, part god, by virtue of his lineage, connected very much with Atlantis. Now, the interesting thing is that, you know, the oracle Lisa Renee has been talking about Thoth and saying that he co-opted the emerald tablets, he turned all this stuff around, blah, blah, blah. So here's what happens, you know, like these pure Pleiades end up being force bred or whatever with these Anunnaki reptilians. And then this is what's going on to the earth, right? So yes, this is us. And the fellow who was talking, Sarion, I'm sorry, I'm not getting your name, was saying about how, yeah, well, we do have a lot of mixed DNA, right? And it really comes from these Pleiadian seedings, in part, along with probably other, you know, it's said that there have been at least 25 seedings and influences onto the earth plane. But I think what's important about this research is that it starts getting us the story of like, oh my gosh, what actually really went on? How did this happen? Who were the characters involved? And when did this take place? We have the next Pleiad, Electra, who was a priest, or no, sorry. Yeah. Oh no, that's me still talking about Thoth and Hermes. And Hermes had 3 incarnations on this planet. You know, that's why one of them is Hermes Trismegistos, the thrice great Hermes. So they can come back, you know, through virgin birth priestesses. We have Electra. Now, I think this is the one I'm connected with, because when I look at them, I'm like, oh my God, wherever you have the emotion, you know, that's your Pleiad, that's your mother. And so she's the one who also, essentially being raped by Zeus, bore Dardanus, who founded Troy. So, you know, Troy was again kind of a mixed bag, but it was meant originally to have kind of this more Pleiadian energy. And then the Greeks, who were later taken over more by the reptilians, really put the kibosh on Troy. And it's said that this Electra pulled her hair down, let her hair down in grief when Troy burned. And we have Taugete, who resisted the advances of Zeus unsuccessfully. So look at this guy. Already 3 of the major Pleiades he's force breeding with. And she tried to fend him off by praying to Artemis, okay? That warrior energy. And she did turn her either into a deer or a cow. That lasted for a little while, but not long enough. And eventually she was impregnated by Zeus and bore Lacedaemon, who was a legendary founder of the country he named after himself, whose capital was Sparta. And much more to that story. I won't go into this right now. Finally, we have the three other Pleiades, Alcone, Celaeno, and Sterope. And they have children who are somewhat lesser known. Alcone, presumably by the god Poseidon, the Anunnaki Poseidon, again, the supposed founding god of Atlantis, had a daughter and 4 sons, and 2 of them became major kings. And her daughter, Aithusa, conceived a son by Apollo. And so, you know, these women were interacting with these beings on the other side quite a bit. Celaeno, also by Poseidon, conceived Lycos. And by the god or the Anunnaki Ares, the Pleiad Sterope bore Oenomaus, who became the king of Pisa. And that's where the Olympic Games emerged from. So the Olympic Games are ultimately a Pleiadian type of thing. And then we have, to conclude here, Merope, the only Pleiad said to have birthed a child as a result of intercourse with a mortal. Merope. And she is said to have been ashamed of this fact. And one legend states that her star was the least visible because of this. And it may be that this refers to a priestess of virgin birth, or a female being of virgin birth, who broke her vow to abstain from sexual relations with human men and decided to really enter into a full-blown human life as a result. So, you know, this stirs a lot. I mean, it just, even every time I talk about it, it just stirs a lot with me. Whether you've heard this show or not before, you know, my presentation, I think that different things have come up today that might be stirring a lot for you. And there might be time for, you know, 1 or 2 questions, but I think it's important that we begin to look at these stories, unearth them, clear them off, and see, what are they all about? What are they telling us? What do we need to know? So that we know more what to set right, particularly as regards women's wombs and their use and misuse on this planet, and what we're going to do going forward. So I'll pause there. I don't see anything in Q&A. It looks like there's many. I don't know if Neil or any of you want to, you know, sort through any of this and help me.
Oh boy.
God help me.
That's a lot to unpack. That is a lot to unpack. And it brought up a lot for me personally. It connected so many dots. I can't even, I don't feel comfortable sharing, you know, my whole personal story here. But the rape component, I think many women identify with that. And there's a lot to that. There's a lot to that. I was married 30 years ago in Greece, and I'm still married to the same man. Who I have jokingly referred to him as Poseidon himself.
Interesting.
So it brought up a lot for me. You know, my husband is very connected with the sea and Poseidon. He calls his car Poseidon. Really interesting.
You know, it's like our karma is all right there, right?
Yeah, for sure. But, you know, in looking at the comments and seeing, you're blowing people away in the comments. Just,
I'd love to see them. I hope you and Neil will save them and maybe send them to me, because
I'm gonna ask, because I really feel like we need to have them. One of the comments, Jen is listening in Australia, and she was connecting dots between Uluru being the solar plexus and being on that, you know, ley line with the place that you showed. Now I can't think of the name.
Yeah, Matteo Tipi, Devil's Tower, quote unquote. Yeah.
Or the other one, the one in Australia that starts with
Hidden Marsh Island.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Matteo Tipi had a lot of resonance with me, because Chief Golden Light Eagle, who was a dear friend of mine, did an event there. And it was very profound for many of the people that went, that were activated by this story. Yeah. So you were connecting a lot of dots, I'm sure, not just for me personally, but for everybody in the chat. And so there's just so much to unpack there. Now, you had at one point talked about, because this is such an in-depth presentation, Marguerite, and you know, Neil had kind of warned me and prepared me, like, you're going to really resonate with this, Michelle. So I sat here, I was like, wow, I don't even want to get up to go to the bathroom. Like, I didn't want to miss. I was screenshotting your slides. I took 5 pages of notes with a hand that's so swollen I can't even write with. So I do feel that, I think you mentioned there was a way to look at that presentation online. Is that what you were telling?
Through my Reclaiming Our Starry Origins webinar. If people want it, they can write to me, dove@sevensistersofferings.com, and we can get you to it. Yeah, it's a longer presentation about the Pleiades. Different though when I did it years and years ago. So it's like each time I do it, I've learned more, and I add more, and I get more, connect more dots. So
I saw you, I witnessed you doing that, and it made so much sense to me, because Neil had said that this is a power pack presentation. Michelle, you're going to love it. She's presented it before, and Neil had to step out, and he told me, you know, you and Flo are going to be on because I've got to go somewhere, because he thought he had seen the whole presentation, right? So I'm sitting there thinking, when I have dinner with Neil tonight, I'm going to be saying, you have to go back and watch it, because there's so many golden nuggets in there that are coming forward for now time, because that's where we're living. But you helped connect so many dots, you know, with bringing this presentation through. I think is giving all of us permission to dive deeper into the story. And one of the things that was coming through for me was, you know, how fiercely passionate you are for the Amazon warrior women, that it's up to us to say no.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
I see a lot coming through, a lot of people connecting with certain, you know, influencers who are bringing forth a lot of information, and intuitively I can see some of the distortions in it, where the way that I've always related to it is the way sexuality has been usurped. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, I think, from what I've witnessed, you know, might have gotten caught up in the whole porno version of sex. Right. And don't really know how to get their way out of that maze. You know, I think this is really important in the discussion, where women are reclaiming aspects of themselves, where they give themselves permission to say, that's not who I am.
Right. And shout out to Indigo Angel, check her out on YouTube, because she
I
says a
wrote
lot
her name
about
down.
this stuff, and how to get out of it, and what's what, and what we want and what we really don't want, and what is tagged and reptilian in nature, and like, wow, how is this helping us?
So much coming through in the name of feminism that got distorted. That's what I
and
feel.
with everything, and I was shown, hey, every oracle has misinformation and disinformation, and your job is to just discern where it is and not throw the baby out with the bathwater, but just be like, and including me and everyone. And so it's like, well, we're all in this together. If we all know that we all have some disinformation, then we can just go, all right, what makes sense now? What really makes sense?
Yes, and I do feel, one of the things Chief Golden Light Eagle talked about was instantaneous forgiveness. And this is an interesting concept as we're going through the unpacking of what's been done throughout history in the cosmos, the microcosm on Earth as the macrocosm that we see in the cosmos. And it is, I could feel the challenge of many women who have gone through these experiences, either in past life regressions, that are seeing things in their dreams, because the veil is so thin right now, everything's coming through. And that keyword that you just used, the discernment piece, I believe it's a muscle inside of us that needs to be continually used and not to be forgotten or left out. Discernment is huge right now. And it's really easy to get caught up in someone else's storyline rather than just really feeling into our own. And there's a lot happening when it comes to, I've had this discussion with a lot of people about healing the divide between Lemurian energies and Atlantean energies.
That's right.
Knowing, because I had a lot of tears on many of the mothers you talked about. I felt a lot of emotion with each one, and coming into that, knowing that these things happened and they were not okay.
No.
And how do we come into the forgiveness aspect without, holding our passion for what we believe in, but at the same time, to move forward on the spiral, somehow we have to get through it.
Well, and I think part of it is that we know we get to change this. We get to change ourselves epigenetically. We get to transmute our DNA to what we want it to be. We get to remove these tags and hooks and abusive, snares, and we don't have to stay in it, which makes forgiveness a heck of a lot easier when you have empowerment.
Yeah.
And we can let it go because we're not continually enslaved by the BS. The reason we're enslaved is because they don't want us to know and see that. They've continued the abuse by veiling our eyes to it. And now the veils are coming off. And let's face it, most of the people in these movements are the women now.
Yes. That's what I see.
That's why we need to know some of the feminine history of it, not as a dividing, but just as a okay, wow, this is a strong piece of it. And now we can get together with our brothers and our male lovers and, work in harmony. But we've got to unveil this piece of it because this is the crux of it, the hijacking of the woman.
I've had this discussion with, I bring it up with different people, different women in my life, different men in my life. I watched, my husband had this on the TV. It was the Super Bowl, and it had the when Shakira and J-Lo and I forget who else was on there dancing during halftime. Half of the people I talked to thought it was women being empowered, and the other half said it's women selling themselves. Mm-hmm. It was really an interesting feeling that I was feeling inside of me. And I've noticed it on MTV too. It's not that I watch these shows. I really don't want to participate or watch. My husband's a marketer and he says he's watching them for marketing perspective and things like that. I do think it's good to see everybody's perspective and to see what our children are being exposed to and what our peers are looking at and being exposed to, and where that thread of energy is weaving throughout each one of us. And I just hold you in such esteem, Marguerite, for what you're sharing, because it's giving each one of us, it's challenging us to actually listen to that inner guidance, to listen and to feel into our discernment. We have that. Each one of us has that. And how are we going to flip the script? How are we going to change the narrative to where we're not pushing the masculine down, but we're integrating these both? And, you know, I see a lot of men coming into their feminine, especially with Neil and Flo here. I mean, look at how beautiful these men are. So
because, you know, one of the major things that was done to disturb humanity was to destroy the hieroskamos, the sacred marriage. That was like pretty much number one first thing. So we're needing to restore that again, and we are in the process of doing it.
Absolutely. And your presentation is giving us permission and an invitation, both. I really thank you. I'm trying to read these. Can you see any of these chats? I have them on. I have my phone in front of me and my.
I could look, but somebody just asked Indigo Angel. She's a woman who is just a very awake star seed, and she's got a lot of information. You can go to Indigo Angel 222. Now I'm doing advertising for her, but I think she's so great.
I think that's interesting. She has the 222.
Yeah. I don't know what our timing is, and if we have other people. Yeah, IndigoAngel222.com.
We have a few more minutes. I think we pushed off to 4 o'clock. Is that right? So we have a few more minutes before I'm going to announce our next guest.
Yeah.
I wanted to read. Krista says, Marguerite, this has been beyond amazing to learn and see pieces together. Oh my gosh, now it's going a little bit crazy. Your commitment to the message is so inspiring and received. Thank you for your service, sister. Can you put this in the text book so I can be reached?
Yeah.
Or teach to the children of the world.
Yeah, I know. I have to think about that. I mean, some of it is in various things, but I think I need to have just an accessible, that's going to be projects down the road, you know. Yeah.
Can you see any of the chat boxes?
Well, yes, I can. And there's 2 Q&As here. 7 sisters in Norway. Yeah, it's the same story. It's just slightly. Yeah. Yeah. Many cultures have these 7 sister stories all over. And so it's interesting to look to see, how do they overlap? Where are they different? Where are they the same? Krista is saying, sometimes I see a woman advertising on Facebook who resembles Marguerite, who talks about hair care for natural curls.
I love it.
Doppelganger and triple ganger. She's got people walking around that look just like her, because I'm in stores and they're like, I recognize you. I know you. Didn't I meet you? But I'm like, I don't know. I got a doppelganger walking around. So, I mean, there are just so many questions, and, you know, I don't want to infringe on the next person's time. So, but let's put it this way, you know, come to visit 7sistersmysteryschool.com. The 7 is written out. Write to us at dove@7sistersofferings.com. And, you know, maybe I can help you either with some of these questions, or if you're feeling a real burning desire, you can book a session with me, you know, a Pleiadian investigation session.
I love that.
Or, you know, that type of thing. Because there's so much to this, and Z Earth Star and Indigo Angel and I and others, Lisa Renee, you know, we're all into this thing of reclaiming our wombs. All right. And this goes from human all the way to the Pleiades and everywhere, the level of the goddesses. And that's what we're doing right now. So I really thank Neil also for, you know, tuning into this. And inviting me and just having all of these deep dives into these various topics that are filled with mystical understanding.
You hit it out of the ballpark. I'm there's going to be a lot of integration tonight, I'm sure, for all of us. And I want to just thank all of our participants here who did write in, and hopefully we can get them to send you their questions so that they can be answered directly. You just have been amazing. And I thank you so much. Where are you physically located now?
On the East Coast, actually.
So like New York or Boston?
In the Berkshire Mountains of Massachusetts.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And just your story has been so uplifting and enlightening. And I thank you so much. I thank you for also rearranging your day. And
I know.
You thought you had a different time. And
it was the craziest thing, but I guess I just have to trust. So, but I will have to leave now. So my apologies to the rest of the presenters and so forth, but dinner calls over here on the East Coast. So
I hear you. Well, thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and I'll look forward to more deep dives with you. Absolutely.
Blessed be. All right.
Okay.
Take care now. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
After 3 years of having to produce the Portal to Ascension conference online, we have been waiting for this moment. The Portal to Ascension conference is returning live and in person. Join us at the Marina Village in San Diego, California, April 21st to 23rd, 2023. As massive shifts are happening on the planet and hidden truths are being uncovered, we are piecing together the fragmented parts of our existence and timeline. At Portal to Ascension, we are dedicated to full circle awareness of the truth of who we are and remembrance of our connection to the cosmos. This is showtime. There is no holding back. Now is the time for us to harmonize the frequencies and create unity and peace on Earth. We are deprogramming from an outdated matrix system, re-educating and remembering an inherent truth that connects us all. As we come together, we activate our truest potentials, individual gifts, and collective resolve. We are ushering a whole new reality that we know is possible and is waiting for us to embrace it. Join founder Neil Gore and the entire Portal to Ascension team with hosts Alan Steinfeld, Michelle Anderson, and Joan of Angels over these 3 days, April 21st to 23rd, 2023. We will experience musical performances by Larissa Stowe and the Shakti Tribe, Vox Angeles, Share the Light, Admiral Apollo, and Torquemji. This conference features incredible luminaries such as JJ and Desiree Hurtak, Adam Apollo, Carolyn Corey, Robert Schock, Linda Moulton Howe, Robert Edward Grant, Barbara Lamb, and many more. Register now at ascensionconference.com. It is time for humanity to awaken.